We're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another weekly Q&A session. I am Scott.
And I'm Chris with Hi-Lux Optics.
We're here to take the honestly pretty unusual assortment of questions that we get on a weekly basis. Now, if we were to cover all of these questions in one of these live Q&As that based on a week-by-week basis, we'd be here all day. So we really trimmed it down to our top 5 or 6 generally each week. And we're going to start nice and simple with what length sunshade do I need for the long scope, depending on barrel length?
And this is specifically for the Malcolm 6 power long scope, the Gen 2. The minimum barrel length that you can mount the scope on is 28 inches, and you would need the 3-inch extension. So we have 4 different lengths of extensions: the 3-inch, the 5-inch, the 7, and the 9. And that's for the 28-inch barrel, 30-inch, 32, and 34-inch barrels. Now, this will probably cover about 80% of the common guns out there. But for those of you who have something unusual, like a 33-inch, I would suggest going with the slightly longer one and then maybe cutting it down to match the length of your barrel.
Another possibility would be trimming it or setting it back so it matches up to the end of your muzzle. And if getting your head position isn't really all that easy still, you could put a little bit of a buffer on the back of the butt and match up the length that way. Now, that being said, I have been getting calls about rifles with barrels as long as 40 inches. What would you recommend people do in that scenario?
So that's a very special case. It's usually the muskets, like a Zouave musket or something like that. A lot of those don't even have dovetails cut onto the barrel themselves. So if you're going to go the gunsmithing route, maybe cut a dovetail a little bit further back from the muzzle so that you could mount a full-length scope on top. Or you may need to custom make a sunshade, but that's something we may offer in the future for those peculiar cases.
So since he mentioned custom, I got to go with the basic kit here. We do typically ship the scopes with the 5-inch sunshade, which does match up with the 30-inch barrel. We found that to be the most common length as far as I've seen. So yeah, if you order the kit, it's going to come with the 5-inch, good for the 30-inch barrel, and then any other length. So 3-inch for the 28-inch, 5-inch, which comes in the kit for the 30-inch, 7-inch sunshade for the 32-inch, and 9-inch sunshade for the 34-inch. That is a tongue twister.
Yeah.
All right, that leads us into question number 2 on the topic of gunsmithing. Now, this is phrased in a particular way, and we're going to answer it, but I'd like to read the question direct. So what if the rifle doesn't have the mounting screws or holes for the rear mount? Now, this question is asking, in particular, mounting a short scope on a Winchester 92 or 94 style rifle.
So the Winchester model 92 and 94 rifles are pretty popular. A lot of companies are reproducing them nowadays. The originals, a portion of them had factory peep sight holes drilled and tapped to the left side of the receiver, which is what we use to mount the scopes. Some of the modern ones, like the Rossi 92, and I can't think of the other ones off the top of my head, but those don't have the peep sight mounting holes. So, and unfortunately, this is a top ejection rifle, and you will need to offset mount the scope somehow. So if you want to do the least amount of work, I think it would be just to drill and tap the 2 holes on the left side of the receiver if you wanted to put a scope on that. Otherwise, you could also drill 4 holes onto the barrel and use our offset mounting kit with the plates. That's another way to do it. But because of the top ejection, you will need to drill and tap, most likely. And this is also, we also get a bunch of questions about the 1860 Henry or the 1860 Yellow Boy. The same thing, because of the top ejection cartridge or the top ejection receiver, you will need to offset it somehow.
Now, later on, top ejection rifles like the 73, those have the rail for the dust cover, which we use for a different mounting kit. The 1860 Henry especially it was around before people were all that commonly mounting scopes on a lever action style rifle. They existed on things like muzzle loaders, actually really just muzzle loaders for a long time. But the Henry rifle was kind of a close range hunting and safety sort of rifle, so it wasn't originally intended for those longer shots. I forget what the actual original slogan was. It was something like, you get a Henry rifle for anything out to 50 yards, all the way out to arm's reach. Arm's reach, you use your revolver. It was something strange like that. But yeah, they weren't really originally meant to shoot far enough for optics to have been necessary. So they weren't really designed for peep sights, optics, anything like that.
But I imagine nowadays with the advances in manufacturing, those guns have gotten a lot more accurate.
I mean, you can push them out to about 300 yards, but still there's inherent problems with the toggle link action. So it's not going to have the precision of really any other lever action after that point. But they're still beautiful. I still want to buy a couple. All right, continuing in our tradition of old classic rifles. Now this one, I'm not going to read the full question because it is about a paragraph long. This fella is an older fella who's got a rifle even older than he is. I have an 1890 Winchester 22 WRF old rifle, and it shoots great. Is there any way that you or I could put an old-looking scope on it? I would love to have an old scope on it. Is it even possible? This is one of those old gallery guns. I've also heard them called carnival guns. It is a pump action 22. And this particular model was a little weird. There's a variation where certain ones you could remove the top of the receiver in order to access the internals to repair it. Because of that, I wouldn't advise drilling and tapping onto the receiver. For this particular rifle, there's really only one way to go about it, and that is to just drill and tap into the barrel. They weren't set up to be long-range shooters. They weren't set up for optics. At this time, there were optics available that were being mounted on other rifles, but it was a fun gun. It was a gallery gun. It was something you go see at Coney Island, go, shoot some plates.
Hit all the balloons.
Hit the balloons and win a stuffed bear. So you got to get a little creative with how you're mounting it up. Unfortunately, this one is going to require gunsmithing. That being said, if you decide that gunsmithing is a little bit beyond what you'd like to do, I find this rifle very, very beautiful. I would love to have that rifle. Please call me. All right, question 4. Now, this is going to be directed mostly at Chris because he shot this a lot more than I did. There was a couple of videos that we put out a while ago where we mounted a TD3C red dot sight on just a hell of a Magnum revolver. And the question is, that looks ignorant to shoot. Will the red dot hold up? Did it?
And it did hold up. So that was I believe I forget what actually the caliber.
453?
I think it was the 50 caliber. It was a Smith & Wesson, but we can't have the 50 cal. I think it was like the 460 Smith & Wesson or something.
460, yes.
But man, that actually didn't hurt as bad as I thought it was going to hurt. Had a muzzle brake on it, and it was quite pleasant to shoot after you got over the initial fear factor. But man, the TD3 held up well. I don't particularly see it as a practical gun that you could carry, but it is a fun gun that you could shoot. Maybe you could even take it on a hunt and go shoot a wild pig or something.
Yeah, that thing weighed about as much as a rifle. It was a lot of weight at the end of your hands. But it did also kick. Just a beautiful.
And man, the fireballs was pushing out. That was awesome.
We recorded the fireballs in slow motion, and it was probably about 8 inches of flame sticking out of those ports. God, it was beautiful. Do we have any more ammo for that?
I think we do. We can shoot it next time.
Stay tuned. We may end up shooting more fire. I'd love to shoot that at night or during sunsets. We really get a nice, brilliant glow. We'll play around with it. Now, the last question is more for the modern scopes, because back in the day, they only had candles, but here we go. What is an illuminated reticle? And I'm going to expand on this to also say, is it night vision? How do you use it? What is it for? Let's just dive deep into illuminated reticles.
So typically on a scope, let's say a modern rifle scope, if it has a illuminated reticle, it's designed for low light illumination or for use in conjunction with a night vision clip-on or maybe a thermal sight, but it's typically designed for low light use. And it's a glass etched reticle with a chemical film on top of it that reflects the light from the LED. That's one type of the illuminated reticles. Another type would be like our CMR8, the fiber optic illuminated reticles. That one we run a tiny fiber optic line along one of the main crosshair stadia lines. And because of that, it's not an glass etched reticle, so you're not going to have all the floating data like for your wind holds or BDC information. Everything has to be connected with the central, like a crosshair. But you can make it have some useful information, like our CMR8 B.BDC reticle. You have the BDC holds and some wind holds or leads. So that is possible, and it is truly daylight bright because of that fiber optic wire. And the other one is a diffractive illuminated reticle. So we don't have anything like that in our current lineup, but they are expensive. Typically, you'll find these on like the high-end European glass companies. Essentially, it's a prism within the reticle illumination housing, which amplifies the light in the middle. So, and that gets you a truly daylight bright first focal plane reticle. But well, I mean, stay tuned. We're doing more research into this, and we're looking to maybe offer this in some of our scopes in the future.
I do want to clarify, though, that an illuminated reticle, for one thing, it is not night vision. If you turn on the illumination, it's not going to, do that nice green color where you pick up heat signatures or whatever. This simply illuminates the reticle to provide contrast.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're aiming at a dark target or a target in shadow, something like that, where the regular black lines of the reticle don't show up, this makes the reticle show up, and then you can get some contrast.
Mm-hmm.
As for color, we do offer red and green generally. As it really depends to you what color is going to be preferential.
Mm-hmm.
I go by the mindset of red is not going to mess with your eyes' night vision capabilities as much, and green is typically the color of foliage. So red is the color that I would pick if I were to use illumination regularly. Green is good contrast, but if you're hunting, if you're out in the woods, it maybe would blend in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And it really comes down to personal preference. I think the green looks a little bit brighter, but remember, it is designed for low light. So and the dusk or dawn shooting conditions, I think both will be usable.
And since we were talking about old scopes at the beginning of this, I will tie it off by saying that back in the mid 1800s, and even as far back as the 1700s in telescopes, there were illuminated reticles. However, they were literally a candle. You would cut a hole in the side of the scope, attach a cup with a candle, and the candle would reflect off of the reticle, which I'm sure you could imagine had some problems, and you don't want to tilt it over because then you got a candle or, in a few sad instances, an oil lantern spilling on you.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we've come a long way. I think that about ties it up for this week's series of questions. Y'all take it easy out there. Like, subscribe, follow, the other things that people say.
And we'll see you guys next week.
All right, let's see if we can end this.